Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Mark Hapeman, President of Curie Solutions. I've got Logan Therrien here, who is our Chief Strategy Officer. I've got Erik Gifford, who is the manager of our consulting team, and Matt Albers, who is the manager of our assessment team. Our topic for this call is what should I do about my assessment? Should I be pausing it, or should I continue down the path that I have started? And I'm going to hand that over to Matt to start, as his role is the one that spends all day, every day in your assessments with you.
That's right. Thanks, Mark. So should I pause the assessment? It's kind of the theme of what we've heard over the last week or so. And I'd like to kind of reverse it with a question, right? So instead of, do I think an assessment is valuable? Of course, but let's put it into a question for you. If you're choosing between two different people to do business with, one of which has said, I promise I'm very good at cybersecurity. And then you have another company who says, not only do I promise, this company says that I'm good at cybersecurity. Here is my certification saying I'm really good at it, at least for basic, safeguarding of CUI. Who are you going to choose to work with? More than likely that person who has proven, not just by their own word, that they're doing a good job, that a company has come in and said, hey, you're doing a really good job. Here's a piece of paper that says that you are doing a really good job. I'm likely going to pick that person who has the assessment that's been completed by somebody else, who has proof that they have actually done the things that they say they're doing. They're not just saying it. And so I think people need to probably step back and consider that a little bit here when you're thinking, should I pause? Is this a knee-jerk reaction? You've done 90% of the work already. If all you're looking at is an assessment, it's the last part. It's the smallest part. It's the scariest part, because you don't want to fail. You don't want to go through this whole assessment, spend this money, and then find out that you're not compliant, right? And that makes sense. But you've spent all this time, you know CMMC, you've done all these things, you've been working on it for years, more than likely, right? Since 2020, when we started talking about it. So you're already at the finish line. Should you pause it? I wouldn't. I'd say cross that finish line, get that certificate, be the difference between you bidding on a contract and the person next to you who didn't follow the rules, didn't do CMMC, didn't care whether or not it was going to be real. Do you guys agree? Disagree?
Yeah, Derek. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think one of the biggest things we see on the consult side of the house is, more and more lately is the desire to have some form of assessment at the end. And if you're already at the point of ready to be assessed, you already have an assessment booked. Just go through with it, get it done. It may feel like the ripping off the Band-Aid, because like Matt said, that's the big scary part at the end. But ultimately, you're going to be in a much better position. And I think we've all seen across the DIB community leading up to this point where many of the primes have consistently been ahead of the game as far as their expectation of deadlines and minimum scores and so forth. I don't anticipate that's going to go away. We've had some internal conversations along those lines about the memos we've seen from various DIBs and just the history of the program and so forth, where I think you're going to see that the primes, they're not going to want to be exposed to the risk of not being compliant by some member of their supply chain not being compliant. And the best evidence they will have from a supplier is that certificate versus I looked at it myself and I think we're good. So there's definite value in that.
Right, because the one thing that hasn't changed is that the primes are still required to pass that flow down that contract requirement, and then verify that those requirements are being met. Right, so that's a pretty easy way to meet that requirement. So the Department of Defense requirements to have that phase 2 implementation doesn't necessarily make it where the primes have to change their requirement to have that show of compliance. So I don't think there's anything to add, because Erik, you run consulting all day and you see the folks that are going through it and then the challenges and the way they're actually navigating this. Matt, you're seeing the assessment process day in and day out. I think one of the things as the program manager on my side and watching this, though, is one of the challenges I see happening in the future, and I kind of equate this to the tidal wave, right? We have this big ebb of flow. At Curie, we haven't really seen many clients reschedule or cancel, so for the most part, it's business as usual. But I've heard some stories, right, about a lot of OSCs that have chose to delay or cancel. And as we've seen from recent interviews, or not interviews, but quotes from the DoD CIO, that there's nothing stating that there's going to be a cancellation, but there is expectation of changes, right? So, that's in 90 days when that comes back to here's the changes, phase 2 is now delayed, right? That's potential, right? So what's the worst case scenario here is that we still have the same amount of CCAs, lead CCAs, all that inventory of folks that can do assessments that had a backlog, for 3 to 4 months, some out to the end of the year. What is that doing to the backlog now, right? So if you are a contractor who was just let's ride this out and delay it, the potential for that delay to be even further than you expected or that you are capable of risking may affect you, right? So when you thought you could have got back on the schedule for November, the risk is that you're now back on for February, March next year, which could be what that deadline is. Again, we don't know, but what I see right on the wall that it's not canceled, that there's just going to be changes. So what is this decision now? How is that risk going to impact you in the future?
Great. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll wrap this video up. And please, if you are not a subscriber and like to become one, click the subscribe. There's a bell, I believe, as well. I'm showing my lack of technical aptitude, I suppose. But go ahead, click those. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions? Go to www.curie.com. We've got some forms you can fill out to get some questions answered, to gather more information about what we offer, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.